Hey folks, welcome to another lecture in the Spark series. This is lecture 6. Well, in the past two lectures, we have discussed about writing a wordcount program. Well, when data is read using RDD and when data is read, text file is read using DataFrame. Well, in the particular lecture where text file is read using DataFrame, we used withColumn function, where we discussed in not in detail a brief about withColumn function. Well, it has several usages when you are using data frames. So let's discuss in detail and let's also list the usages of with column function when we are working with data frames. Our agenda is in detailed description or explanation about with column function and listing, followed by listing the major usages, and let's also use them in practice. So let's jump into our work Databricks workspace. So here we are in the Databricks workspace. So let's start our lecture by looking at the documentation of with column function. But well, if you are a Python user, then you should be knowing that we can get documentation about any keyword or any function using help function on those keywords or functions. So let's use help function on with column. But before that, let me create a data frame. Well, let's create our own data frame. Uh, So if you are not aware of how to create data frame manually, then you should consider checking my video previous lectures. So let's create our data frame. Let me create my data with the list of tuples. So first column will be of serial number, and the second column will be of subject name, let's say, and let third column be an integer of marks, how many marks that the respective subject had. Let's say 90, 90, let's say, and let's create few more records of similar to maths, and let's mark maybe 95. So let's also define whether he has or he or she has passed or not. Okay, okay, let's copy that and use that. Well, third column will be science and 85, and well, he has passed, he or she. And fourth column will be social. Okay, I had an error. I made an error. Social of marks 75. I don't like social. Maybe I'm being biased with social. Let's not bother about that. Okay, let's also create our schema. Schema takes a list of strings. First column is serial number, and second column is subject, and third column will be marks, and the fourth column is category. Let's category of whether pass or fail. So this is our data. So let's create our data frame. Let's store that in variable in df spark dot create data frame with data as data, sorry, and schemas schema. Okay, let's run the tab. Cluster, we haven't created a cluster, so well, let's give us the nudge. So let's, okay, well, I haven't coupled my notebook with cluster, so let's create our cluster first in this compute section, and this is my previous cluster. Let's delete that first. And yeah, we'll create our new cluster. Creating cluster in Databricks, community edition workspace is quite simple, I suppose. we just need a name for that. Let me name my workbook as phase 12. It's my hobby of naming as phase 1, phase 2, and you can choose your runtime environment, but I'll go with default. And as it is a community edition, we will just get a 15 GB of memory. And if if you keep this notebook or cluster ideally for 1 or 2 hours, then it will automatically terminate. It's a part of guidelines with community edition. So if you want to run your cluster as much time as you need, then consider subscription. Let's not bother about that. Create compute, and well, that's it. uh, you can see here spinning, and once it's create our cluster, then you can notify here with a tick mark. So it will take a time, it will take a couple of minutes, I suppose. So let's jump into our workspace with column. Well, I think the cluster is created. Let's attach our cluster with the working notebook. So here in this tab, will you can see all the clusters, and here at phase 12 you can see a green mark which says that this particular cluster is running. And so let's click here, and there you go. It's connecting. Yeah, well, we are connected with phase 12 cluster. It's phase 12 is just a name that I gave. So let's run our tab and let's see. Create data frame schema. Sorry, we just had an error, typo. There you go. We have created our data frame, and let's see. Yeah, first column serial number, which is long, and subject, which is a string, marks, which is again long, category, which is again string. So okay, uh, let's use help function on the with column. So it, it will give us the documentation, and let's look into it. Help of df dot with column. All right, here we are. Okay, help on method column with column in module pyspark.sql.dataframe. With column function has two parameters, which are column name, which is a string, and column pyspark.sql.column, which gives us which returns the data frame again. So let's dive into our parameters. So the first parameter is column name, which is a string, a name of new column. So it should be a string, which should be the column name for the new column. And second parameter is call, or column, or an expression for the new column. So it could take the second parameter can be of a column name, or a column for the an expression for the new column. So these are the two parameters, and that function returns as a data frame. So what we are going to get is a data frame by using that with column function. So let's also look into that. See, the one good thing about documentation is that you can get good examples. So let's look into the example that this documentation has provided. The df equals pyspark dot created data frame. So they created a data frame with list of tuples with only two columns and specified schema, age and name. Age is an integer and name is a string. Well, df dot with the column name of a new column. First argument will be a name of new column, and second column they gave an expression like df dot age will subject a specific column, which is actually the age first column in the created data frame. And they have added a value of 2 for every item, and then dot show will give returns the data frame. So here is the result from the with column function with specified expression, which creates a new column that gives addition of 2 to the age value. So 2 plus 2 is 4, 5 plus 2 is 7. Well, okay, well, we have seen the documentation. Let's specify the takeaways from takeaways from the documentation or firstly input parameters. Those could be first, it has two input parameters. Let's specify that as well. Two input parameters, and first parameter will be new column name of new column, which is a string type, and the second is again a column or an expression for new column. So, and let's also specify what are the output. Output is its results a data frame, sparks data frame. So here are the takeaways. So with that saying, uh, let me list the major usages for with column function. So usages. So let me list them one by one. First could be altering or changing the data types of a column. Second could be updating the column values. And third could be creating new column, which we used in the previous video, creating a new column using, okay, let's let it be. And fourth will be adding a literal value as new column. And fifth could be replacing an old column with new values. So here are the usages. So let's use each one of them practically on our create a data frame. Well, the first usage is altering or changing the data type of column. Oh, okay. Let's see what is the schema of our data frame that we have created. Print schema. Well, we can see here serial number and marks are treated as long. Let's change that data type of data type of marks from long to an integer with using with column function. So this could be our first usage. So let's document that. Let's say usage 1, which is altering data type. So let's use that for, say, let's alter the data type of marks column from long to integer. Okay, this is our, let's modify it a little bit. Okay, okay, let's define that with use of with column, and with column takes a first parameter as name of new column. So well, if you are using a already existed column then as a new column, then it just uh, it is similar like updating the already existed column. So as we are altering the marks column, if you give the same column name as new column name, then it's just updates, it's just like updating the original column. So let's update that by by using df dot marks dot cast. Cast function can be used in order to alter the data types. For that we need a column name. So let's store that in our original order as df again. Well, unsupported data type marks. Okay, it should be a data type here. I just made an error. Integer, cast it as an integer. So yeah, here we are. So you can see here marks has changed from long to integer. Well, okay, let's use the second usage 2, which is updating column. So let's look into our data frame. Okay, here we can see that during when I define my data, I just used lowercase letters for defining the subject name, subject items. So each item in the subject column. So let's change that from lowercase to a title case. I suppose you are aware of what is a title case refers to. Update the column subject to sorry subject to a title case. This is our objective. So well, for completing this objective, we may be needing of some user defined function. Well, I'll talk about this in detail in the next video. Well, for that we need some libraries to be imported from pyspark.sql.functions import UDF. So well, I'll talk about user defined function in detail in the next lecture. So let's use that UDF and define our own function, convert, let it name as convert, and it takes a string and returns s dot title case. This is our user defined function. Well, I'll talk more about this user defined function in the next lecture. Uh, and that is why I'm using a simple user defined function. And let's use that user defined function and meet our objective to update the column name subject to a title case. So let's use that on our df.call. Sorry, with column, and the let column name may be subject itself, and it's an expression. Second attribute will be an expression, and our expression is convert, and convert takes a column name as input, and as it takes but as we are defined that it takes string as a input, but here we are I mean here we are giving column name as input. What internally goes is uh, as we have specified the column name, the each item in the column name will be given as input, and respective output will be noted, and this is how we use a user defined function. Well, I'll talk more about that in the next lecture. So the concept for next lecture will be user defined function. So let's use that. Sorry, def, it should be def. Well, we have run that. Let's print our df using show function. Yeah, well, as you can see, we have got the subject name as in the form of title case in a sense. the first letter is uppercase and the next following letters will be, lowercase. So that is for the usage 2. Let's go on with usage 3. Usage 3, which is creating a new column. So okay, well, let me define that. Creating a new column. So let's create a new column on our DF, which is okay. Let me write that first. Create a new column. Column name will be subject code, which is first three letters of respective subject. So this is our new column. Let's create our new column title as subject code, which could be of first three letters of each name. In the sense, if the subject name is English, then the subject code will be ENG, and likewise the remaining all. So let's create that. Okay, let's define. Let's store that. Yeah, let's store that in the DF itself. DF dot with column, and let's name the new column as subject code, and well, well, again we need a user defined function. Let's create another user defined function, UDF, and our function as, let's name it as change, not change, subject code, and let's take a string as a parameter, and returns return the first three, I mean the first three letters of the string. So this is our user defined function, and let's use that user defined function, which is subject code, and our input will be a column named subject. And again, yes, uh, when we are defining function, we treated input as a string, and when you are using that user defined function, we just gave a column name. So internally, again, I am repeating it again, internally what happens is, uh, even though if you are we need to specify the subject, a column name. Internally, each item in the column will be given as input, and respective outputs will be noted. So this is how we meet our objective, our third objective. And yeah, a subject code has added as a new column, which is string. Let's print our data frame using df.show. So yeah, here we can see that subject code is added as a new column, and which is the first three letters of each subject item in the subject column. Okay, we just met our objective, third objective, I suppose. Yes. Okay, let's jump into the usage 4, which is adding a literal value as new column. So let's think of a case like adding a new column named internals, and it takes value of a 20 marks integer as an integer, and for every column. So let's write our program to meet our objective. Okay, now for using the let for adding a literal value, here in our case a value of 20, we need a function called let. Let's import that. from pyspark.sql.functions import a literal value. Okay, let's use that df dot with column and name our new column as internals and add a value of of 20 and let's save that in a variable df. So here we are added a new column internals as in with data type as integer. So let's print our data frame df dot show. Yeah, well, this is our output, which we added a value of 20 for internals. You can use a lit function to add a specific constant value. It could be of integer or let's say hello, which is an string type. Let's print that. So yeah, we can add an integer or a string or a float value, whatever you suppose. So let it be integer value of 20. Oh, well, we just met our usage 4, objective 4. Let's jump into usage 5. Usage 5, which is replacing an old column with new values. So let's define our objective. Okay, in the see here in the category section we just had whether pass or fail. So let's replace this pass or fail values, which is a string, to a new value. So let me define that clearly. Replace the column what is it, column, category from pass and fail to I mean 1 and 0. I mean, if it is pass, then it is 1, the value should be 1, and if it is fail, then the value should be 0. This is our objective for the usage 5. We can meet our objective, but for that we need a library to be imported, like from pyspark.sql.functions import call. Well, the keyword call is used to subject a specific column in the same sense like as we use df dot a column name. In the same sense, uh, a keyword call can also be used like call of marks. Let's comment that and let's meet our objective like df dot with column and our column name is category. Again, if you use the new column name as previous column, then it just replaces the original column. And our function is the function that we are going to use for this is when and otherwise. It is similar like using if else conditions in Python. So let's also comment that. So okay, uh, I mean, so how to use a when or otherwise, when and otherwise functions are like when the column item name, the item in the column which is category is equal to pass, then return a value of 1. So or otherwise with dot, otherwise I mean you can use many if statements in Python. So similarly you can use many when conditions, and at last you will use otherwise condition. So otherwise it just returns uh, otherwise let it be 0. Let's make it somewhat beautiful. Okay, let it be. When is not. Yeah, well, I forgot that we need when also to be imported. Yeah, here the output is, so let's print our output to see whether we have met our objective. Oh well, as all the, I mean, all the subjects he or she is passed, so every column return only one, as it is the substitute of pass we just used. So yeah, here we are completed our fifth objective as well. So yeah, let me rewind what we have done. Uh, we just we just created our own data. We just created our own data frame using our own data, and we just saw our what we just saw the documentation for withColumn function, which takes two input parameters and returns a data frame. And yeah, well, these are takeaways from the documentation, and we just listed the major use cases where you use withColumn function, which are altering or changing data type, as we are not aware how the data is collected, so sometimes we need to change our data type. So in that cases, when you are using Python's data, sorry, Spark's data frame, then you can use withColumn function to, I mean, alter the data types, and also updating the column value sometimes. Even though we get our data from authorized sources, but sometimes we need to undergo some changes in the columns, updating the column values. Maybe when we are normalizing things, I mean normalizing the columns, and creating a new column also, and adding literal values as new column. Here it should be new. We just saw the use case and replacing the old column. So as a part of usages, we just created our own objectives for each usage, and for the first usage, which is alter data type, we just our objective is alter the data type marks from long to int, and we just did it using withColumn function, using the operation that we had, or operation that we used is df.marks for subjecting a specific column, and use cast function. Well, how we interpret this as on marks dot, I mean on df.marks column, cast it as integer. This is how we read it. And yes, after using this, we just converted or altered the data type from long to integer. And the second function is updating the column, and our objective is update the column subject as a title case. We just did it using a UDF function. Well, I'll talk more about UDF function in the next lecture. It takes a full lecture to cover the, I mean, full functionality of UDF. Let uh, let's skip that part for the next lecture. So I just created a function with a simple output, which takes an string and gives the title case of that string, and use that function for updating the subject column, and yes, our uh, result shows that we just meet our objective. And the call the and the third usage is creating a new column, and our objective is create a new column subject code, which is three letters from the first three letters of subject column. And yeah, again we used UDF, and I'll talk about this in the next lecture. And with a simple input and a simple output, and we just used our user defined function and made our objective with column function. And the fourth objective is adding a literal value as a new column. Literal value in the sense a constant value, which could be a integer or a string or a float value. So for that we need to import a lit function. So we just did it from the pyspark.sql.functions and use that with column function and added a new column called internals, and this is our output. And the fifth usage is replacing an old column with new column. So and the objective is replace the column category from which takes only two values of pass and fail as an integer, and we just replace those values to 1 and 0, which is 1 for pass and 0 for fail. And again we met our objective with using withColumn function along with, I mean, call and when and otherwise functions. So in order to use call, which is similarly which has similar functionality like df dot mark, which subjects a specific column. I mean, this is the column name, so df dot column, which subjects a specific column. And when and otherwise in Spark's data frame is similar to use of if and else conditions in Python. I mean, when condition like if and otherwise like else, and we just met our objective using those functions. When column categories when column category item is pass, then we just return 1, and otherwise return a 0. We could use many mm, similar to many if conditions. We can use many when conditions, and at the last we can use otherwise condition. So yeah, here is our output. We just replaced the items in the category column from pass and fail to pass 0 and 1. Hence